Bleeding purple and gold. From the heart of Los Angeles, this is the LakersNation.com podcast with your host, Trevor Lane.
Hey everybody, welcome to today's show. As always, we're powered by CLNS Media and LakersNation.com, your home for everything Lakers. Well, obviously, we've got a ton to talk about with the NBA trade deadline almost upon us. Anthony Davis rumors are flying. Lakers fans are just about losing their minds over hearing what the Pelicans are asking for from your Los Angeles Lakers. We're going to dive into all of that. But before we get into it, if you guys could do me a quick favor, fill out a survey for me. It seriously takes you about 15 seconds. It's a big help for us in our advertising efforts and everything. All you have to do is go to bit.ly/Lakers survey. That's bit.ly/Lakers survey. Literally takes you about 15 seconds to fill out and would be a big help. So we really appreciate it if you could do that. Well, we have a ton to break down on today's show, from the trade deadline to what it's like being a player that's traded in the NBA, to how general managers work and agents and how it all comes together. And in order to talk about all of this, I've brought in Alex Kennedy from Hoops Hype, good friend of the show, does a great job covering the NBA. Alex, thanks so much for joining me.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Hey, so this Anthony Davis stuff, man, I think Lakers fans right now are kind of going a little bit crazy with this roller coaster that we're on. We're hearing the Lakers are throwing out this massive offer. This broke today. Brad Turner of the LA Times let everyone know that the Lakers offer has improved. They've added more to it, and that now, as of right now, they are offering Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram, Kyle Kuzma, Rajon Rondo, Michael Beasley, 2 first-round picks, and then they're also going to be accepting the contract of Solomon Hill. So they'll be taking on a bad contract in addition to all of those players going out. It seems like an absolutely massive offer, but then we're also hearing from Adrian Wojnarowski and Ramona Shelburne that now the Lakers are getting kind of pessimistic that the Pelicans are even going to accept this offer. Alex, what is going on here? And I'm in disbelief a little bit that the Pelicans would turn this down.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So I think there's a few things to look at here. This reminds me of conversations we've had in the past where, we were looking at a possible star that had been linked to LA. I know, with Paul George or, Kawhi Leonard or whoever, there have been other players that we brought up and thought, okay, should the Lakers trade for them now and give up all these assets, or should they wait and then just try to sign the guy when he hits free agency? So we've had that conversation before on this podcast, actually, about different players. Obviously now, you kind of seeing what's happened with a guy like Paul George, where obviously OKC trades for him, wins him over, he signs a multi-year deal, and the Lakers were kind of frustrated with that, obviously. So I think some of this has to be them looking at how they've handled other situations and think, okay, we should be more aggressive this time. It's also different because it's Anthony Davis. As great as Kawhi Leonard and Paul George are, Anthony Davis, I think most people would agree, is one of the best 3, 4, 5 players in the NBA. It does it on both ends of the floor. It's still relatively young. I mean, this guy is a franchise-changing player that every single team would love to get. So there is more risk involved if you do wait and you don't make a trade offer. But I also think with this, you have the Pelicans maybe holding out hope that they can call Anthony Davis's bluff. And if they put this off till the offseason, maybe obviously they get to the Celtics and everything like that and talk with them, and maybe they get a better offer there. I think part of it is the Pelicans not really wanting to reward the Lakers with there was clear frustration from the Pelicans' part and Dell Dempsey's part about tampering and feeling like this has all been arranged by the Lakers and LeBron James and Rich Paul. So turning around and doing this deal, maybe they feel like that's just kind of a slap in the face, or they feel like they don't want to reward the Lakers for how this really played out. But I look at that offer and it's I don't know how you turn it down. If that offer is in fact on the table and there's not more to the story, or it's been reported differently, then I think you almost have to take that offer, because Brandon Ingram, Kyle Kuzma, Lonzo Ball, those are obviously 3 core players you can build around going forward. 2 first-round picks. They also want to get rid of some of that bad money on their books. If they're taking back Solomon Hill's contract, who has $12.7 million remaining, you're giving them everything they asked for. The only reason that they wouldn't do it, I guess, at this point would be if you think Boston in the offseason can offer, Jason Tatum and more first round picks and other young pieces, if you feel like Boston can beat the offer, maybe that's the reason you wait. Otherwise, it is just them maybe being petty or not wanting to reward the Lakers. So it's a weird situation. I don't think we're going to see anything happen before Thursday. I think the Pelicans know that this offer is going to be there for the next few days, and they're going to keep weighing all their options. I'm sure they're talking to other teams as well. We got the news today that Anthony Davis is willing to maybe re-sign a long-term contract with the Bucks, the Clippers, and the Knicks, as well as the Lakers. So I'm sure there's going to be talks with those other three teams. They don't really have a ton they could offer. I mean, I don't see any of those teams capable of beating the Lakers' offer, but you're certainly going to talk to them. And then, yeah, I mean, I don't think the Laker offer could improve. So it's just going to have to sit on the table till Thursday. But I think the Pelicans are going to take their time and talk this over and make sure they're making the right move here. But I don't know. It's a crazy situation. I didn't expect this to happen. I thought this would be taking place over the offseason after Anthony Davis turned down a Supermax extension. Mm-hmm. So I thought the timing of this, maybe that is surprising as well to the Pelicans and people that are involved in this, because I think a lot of people were assuming this would be an offseason conversation. But yeah, I mean, but with what's being reported, the offer on the table, I'm surprised the Pelicans, if they don't take that, then I think they're pretty crazy.
Yeah, and you know what I mean? This could very well just be posturing. I mean, we've been hearing, and it's been really interesting looking at not just the leaks that have been coming out, but who they've been coming from. Because when you look at a leak from Woj, we've kind of been able to figure out that it's probably not coming from the Lakers side of things. Ramona Shelburne is more plugged in with the Lakers. You have Brad Turner, obviously very plugged in with the Lakers. Same thing with Tanya Ganguly. So you're seeing almost the negotiations play out through the media, which I mean isn't unique. It happens from time to time, but it is kind of this interesting dynamic, this back and forth. So right now, as of we're recording this Monday evening, we're hearing that the Lakers are pessimistic, but again, that's coming from Ramona Shelburne, who's very plugged in with the Lakers and probably wants to put out there that, hey, the Lakers aren't too pleased that the Pelicans are just kind of stringing them along or whatever's happening. So I think that dynamic has been fascinating, but at the same time, it amazes me that the Pelicans could even consider passing on this if the goal is to wait until the Boston Celtics come around in July. Because at this point, that's what we're hearing, is that Danny Ainge has contacted Dell Demps, who's the GM of the Pelicans, and told them, hey, wait until July, wait until the Pelicans can get in, or the Celtics are able to trade for Anthony Davis, because they're not right now because of the CBA and the Rose rule and how that all works. But he's told them to wait until July because the Celtics are going to come at you with an aggressive offer. So you're telling me that the Lakers put everything on the table and the Pelicans are going to turn that down because they're going to trust Danny Ainge? Danny Ainge has ruined two franchises in the last few years with trades that he's made. I don't think he's the guy that I'd be hoping saves me next summer with an even better offer than this kitchen sink deal that the Lakers have put on the table, where they are throwing everything at the Pelicans at this point.
Yeah, it becomes very risky. That's where if you're someone like Dell Demps, who is probably already on thin ice, for being honest. I mean, the guy has made some pretty strange moves over the years, and I've never been a huge fan of his moves and the way that he's kind of built this team. Literally every single first-round pick or first-round prospect that the Pelicans have acquired or drafted, they've traded them after one season. They don't have a single player in the last decade. They don't have a single player aside from Anthony Davis that they acquired in the first round, which is insane. But so I think Demps has his own issues, and maybe Demps is. I think he's probably on the hot seat right now, and kind of feeling that. But one thing I would point out is that, the Boston probably is making offers right now. It's not, they're probably not saying, hey, let's talk in the offseason, let's push the conversation back and we'll talk then. Boston could be saying, hey, on this date, we will offer you XYZ, this many draft picks. They could have that negotiation right now. They just can't actually, consummate the trade until until free agency, whenever, Kyrie Irving's no longer on the books as their designated player, the rookie contract. So, I mean, they could be having negotiations right now, and that's very possible. And that's where I think too, if you're Dell Demps, though, you are already on the hot seat. If for whatever reason, let's say he does, wait and holds on to Anthony Davis past the trade deadline on Thursday, thinks, okay, in the summer I could always go back to that Lakers offer, or I could, go to the Celtics. If something happens where in the offseason Danny Ainge changes his mind, or the offer changes, and this Lakers offer that now is very public and everyone knows about is no longer available, or they missed out and they had to trade Anthony Davis for something else, or the Lakers offer, I mean, really, the Lakers could say, you had your chance at that Godfather offer. We're going to change it. That's where Dell Demps could really lose his job and look really bad in the process and have a hard time finding another GM job after this, just because, I mean, there's a lot at risk here. Whenever you have an offer like this where, we just named 3 core pieces that can be part of your franchise going forward, multiple first-round picks, salary cap relief, if he's not able to get an offer, if he's not able to get this offer or better because he waits and risks it, that's scary for his future in terms of his security, his job security. So yeah, it's a strange situation. I mean, the only reason I can think of that they would be willing to do this is if they love Jason Tatum, they love Jaylen Brown, they love some of those Boston pieces, and then they feel like Anthony Davis would actually, maybe they feel like Anthony Davis would eventually be willing to stay in Boston long term and would, change his mind and start singing a different tune. Because if that's the case, then you can get more out of Boston, because they wouldn't be, trading for him as a rental. They'd be trading for him as a long-term piece, just like the Lakers are thinking. So, I mean, that's the only thing I can think of that, why they would wait till the offseason. But again, incredibly risky to do that.
Yeah, and Alex, I think you bring up a great point there. As far as Dell Demps go and this whole offer being made public, that's probably a big part of why this became public, is to put that much more pressure on the Pelicans. I mean, it came from the LA Times. It came from, obviously, the Lakers side of things. They're putting it out there. Look, we're doing everything we can. They're the ones that aren't accepting this. So, I mean, you've got a couple of things here. You've got the Lakers now have deniability, right? In case something doesn't go their way and the deal doesn't get done, they can say, hey, we did everything we possibly could. This isn't on us. This is on the Pelicans. They're just being petty. They're just trying to play the small market card and do all these things. And that's why the trade didn't get done. It's not our fault. And so that's I think that's part of the part of it here. But it's also a situation where if Demps later on has to accept a lesser offer, right, then he's going to really look bad. And he knows that he's going to look terrible if he has to accept an offer that is less than what the Lakers just gave. I mean, look, Brandon Ingram has been on a tear. He's been playing tremendous basketball. If he continues that for the rest of the season, his value is not going down. His value is going up. I mean, I think that's one issue that a lot of people have right now, is that you've seen so many people in the media who have just assumed that the Lakers offer is still going to be there in July and that it's going to stay the same. Value isn't something that is static. It's going to change. So to just assume that the Lakers players are going to remain stagnant and aren't going to grow, aren't going to improve at all, I think is a little bit risky. And it's also possible things could go the other way. Maybe they go through a rough stretch and things just don't go their way and their value actually decreases. But the bottom line is it's probably not going to stay exactly the same. So assuming that the Lakers offer is going to still be there in July, I don't think that's a safe bet to make, even though that feels like what the Pelicans are kind of banking on. Like, hey, we can get this offer whenever we want.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, a lot can change between now and the offseason. From a playing standpoint, from an injury standpoint, there's a lot to consider there. And I think also, if you're the Pelicans, this is a team that, obviously, the Anthony Davis stuff is the most concerning thing right now, but they're the third worst team in the Western Conference. You have to imagine that they want to get this rebuild going. So, trading Anthony Davis now and then being able to turn your attention to saying, okay, now what can we get for Drew Holiday? Can we flip, Nikola Mirotic? Can we, move, I don't know, every guy that's been mentioned on that team that has, kind of popped up in trade rumors recently. There's a lot of them. Etuan Moore's popped up. There's a number of guys that they're looking to move right now. You would think, you'd want to have those conversations as well, because this is a team that's already so far, they're deep, they're low in the standings. They don't have really any salary cap flexibility. And then you have assets like a Drew Holiday or a Julius Randle or a Mirotic that, teams that are making a playoff push or a championship push are going to want. So if you're the Pelicans too, that's another reason why you may want to get this done sooner than later. You're trying to acquire as many assets as possible. I mean, yeah, maybe, you're thinking the Davis thing can happen in the offseason, but yeah, I mean, again, there's so much risk involved there that I think I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't hold off. I would wait till Thursday, because I think between now and Thursday, you can be confident that a deal is not going to change, or an offer is not going to change. And that's where you can kind of do your due diligence, because they would have had multiple days to talk about this and think it over. But waiting months and months and months, I think that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's I think it is as well. But and maybe I'm a little bit biased in that. That's that's certainly a possibility here. But one more thing that that has popped up, that I went on another podcast yesterday, and they were asking me about what was different this season compared to last season. And I said, well, one of the things is we haven't heard much from LaVar Ball. Well, now that's changed. And apparently that's probably my fault, because I think I jinxed it. So now LaVar Ball is putting out there that he doesn't want Lonzo in New Orleans, and that he is trying to push him to the Phoenix Suns. Now, Lonzo is under contract. He's still on his rookie deal, has a few more years left on that. But Alex, what do you think about this? I saw online here that LaVar Ball is actually scheduled to be on Phoenix area radio stations tomorrow, and that his comments may be sort of mucking things up, maybe causing some problems, and that the Pelicans are going to be a little bit wary because LaVar is so intent on not having him in New Orleans. Can this really be a factor in trade discussions? Do you think the Pelicans will really not do the deal because LaVar Ball opens his mouth?
Man, I can't believe we're talking about this. This is ridiculous. I'm so done with this guy. And I know there's Laker fans that like the Ball family and everything like that. And I love Lonzo. I think Lonzo is not only a really good player, he seems like a great kid. He seems like he's the complete opposite of his father. I've interviewed him several times. My first interview with Lonzo was whenever he was a freshman or a sophomore in high school. It was one of those. And he was just so down to earth and quiet and humble and very different from his father. And then I spent some time around the Ball family. I spent time with LaVar Ball and LiAngelo Ball here in Florida when they did the professional basketball combine. And LiAngelo competed in the event and everything like that. And I did one-on-one interviews with LiAngelo and LaVar, and it's exhausting being around him. Like, I'm not even kidding. And there's certain things that you realize that, you ask LaVar a question, and no matter what the question is, he's going to find a way to answer the question he wants. So you can ask him, what did you think about this today? And he will find a way to talk about Lonzo and the Phoenix Suns and work it into the conversation. And it's almost like you're not even doing an interview. He's talking to himself essentially, and queuing up his own quotes. So it's really, it doesn't surprise me that we're hearing more from him now. I think there was definitely LaVar fatigue from not only just like the media dealing with him, but from fans. If you would tweet something out, like a quote from LaVar Ball or a video, people were saying, we don't want to hear it. We're tired of it. It was too much. It was over, way too much, exposure, I guess, for LaVar and the family. So people got sick of it. I don't think an NBA organization is going to turn down a deal like this because of a comment like that from a player's father. I think also Lonzo does a very good job of making it clear he does not speak for me and he doesn't know how I feel. I know there was times early on in his Lakers stint where teammates were kind of coming at him about stuff that LaVar was saying, and Lonzo would say, don't even listen to him. That's not how I feel. He doesn't represent me. He doesn't represent my feelings, my thoughts. So I know, teammates in the past have been willing to be like, okay, that's just LaVar, and don't worry about him. He's not speaking for Lonzo. So I think you can separate the two, and I'm sure front office would do the same. But then again, I do think it can't help the situation. Obviously, you don't want that kind of negative attention. You don't want that kind of press. While I don't think a team would back out of a deal because of something like that, it certainly doesn't make them want to rush and do this deal and have Lonzo on their roster and then have LaVar constantly chirping in the background. Certainly they would love to get LaVar out of here and just deal with Lonzo. It can't help the conversations, but I don't think that it would actually, slow down the talks. I also don't know if Phoenix is rushing to do a deal right now because of these let's say even if LaVar does want Lonzo in Phoenix, who's to say that Phoenix wants to deal with LaVar Ball? And they may be turned off by these antics as well. You really don't know. So I'm not a big fan of putting a recorder or a microphone into a relative space. I think they should just kind of stay back and let the player represent themselves. Lonzo is a grown man now. He can talk for himself. He can do things himself. So I think also you saw, there wasn't a single team that was willing to have LiAngelo Ball on their summer league roster, which are unlimited, or a G League roster. LiAngelo Ball did not get on a summer league roster. And now you're hearing stuff about LaMelo Ball, and some people are saying, oh, he could be a second-round pick, or he could be a guy that plays in the NBA. But no, I mean, the LiAngelo situation, the way that all played out, we got a very clear understanding of how teams view the Ball family and LaVar Ball specifically, and it's not worth the distraction to them. So, with someone like Lonzo, I think you can get away with it because he is so talented and he could be a really good point guard going forward. So if you're New Orleans, again, I don't think you back out of the deal because of this, but it certainly doesn't help his stock or the momentum for the trade. I would say that.
All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break to talk about betonline.ag. Guys, with all the trade rumors swirling and everything, it's easy to forget that this week the Los Angeles Lakers are taking on the Boston Celtics in Boston. They're going to be traveling to Boston to take on a red-hot Celtics team on trade deadline day. It doesn't get much more exciting than that for NBA action, with plenty of on-court excitement and drama happening on and off the court. You don't want to be left on the sidelines. Go where the action is at betonline.ag. CLNS Media and BetOnline are offering you a 50% sign-on bonus when you use our code CLNS with your first deposit. Go to clnsmedia.com/win. Use promo code CLNS50 for your 50% sign-on bonus today. BetOnline.ag, your online sportsbook experts. Yeah, I mean, it's something that I agree. I don't think it completely nixes things, but if the Pelicans are kind of already on the fence, and what we've heard is that there are some people in the Pelicans organization who really like the Lakers offer and are saying, wow, they're seriously giving us everything we asked for. Young players, picks, plus cap relief. We're getting all of it. And there's some people in the organization that see that and understand that and are okay with accepting it. There's other people who are not. So in a split organization like that, LaVar Ball, I mean, if he's the tipping point, maybe he's just the straw that breaks the camel's back. Even though he's not a major impact, he's certainly not going to help the situation. And so that's going to be a little source of frustration, certainly, I think, for Lakers fans who already are, kind of tired of the LaVar Ball antics. You talked about interviewing him. I've interviewed him myself as well, and it is an experience for sure. Lonzo actually is I always found to be a difficult interview too, just because, not that he is in any way rude or anything like that or over the top, because that's not him at all. He's actually
so shy.
He is, and he's so concise with all of his answers that you don't get a whole lot to really go off of with him. And so he fires answers right back at you so fast, it almost kind of keeps you on your toes. But LaVar, when I did an episode, some time ago, and I had LaVar on as my interview, I thought, oh man, my numbers for this show are just going to go through the roof because LaVar is going to say these outrageous things, and people are going to want to hear his thoughts and everything. And it was the exact opposite. It was the exact opposite. We didn't see the numbers really go up at all. In fact, they were down compared to a normal show because people had grown tired of hearing from LaVar. That was before Lonzo was even drafted. So it was. We are kind of living in that world now, where LaVar, it doesn't have that much sway at this point, but he can still do some damage, I think, and so that could be what's going on here. Alex,
I'm sure the Lakers. I mean, I'm sure the Lakers are annoyed by it too. I'll say that. They have to hate this.
For sure, absolutely. Especially if this is somehow interrupting their trade negotiations. Trade negotiations are a delicate thing in the NBA. It's something that isn't easy because you've got so many parties involved. In fact, Alex, I know you've written a bunch of things about kind of behind the scenes looks at trade negotiations and things like that for Hoops Hype. What can you share with us that maybe the average fan wouldn't know about what it takes to get a deal done in the NBA? I think that's a pretty good thing to transition to right now.
Okay, yeah. So I actually recently did an article. It just dropped this morning, actually, actually, it was yesterday. But anyway, it's an article basically about what happens behind the scenes at the trade deadline. I talked to a bunch of different agents. I talked to players and executives and basically want to get an idea of, okay, here's what's happening in the weeks leading up to a deadline. So, what's happening right now. Basically, an agent is checking in with all of their their players on a daily basis and saying, okay, here's the latest that I'm hearing, because the agents are also talking to executives. So basically, around this time of year, agents are going to more NBA games than usual so they can talk to executives in person. They're calling executives that have a player on their basically any executive that has a player, one of their players on their roster. They're calling them, every other day and trying to check in and see, okay, what's happening. Really, the situation varies a little bit. If you have a player who wants to be traded or he's going to be traded, you're obviously checking in even more and trying to get updates. The executives are all obviously talking. And really, one thing that I think is interesting is that with executives, a lot of people I think assume that these talks are starting right now, but really what's been happening is since the offseason, executives talk, and whenever they talk, they bring up players, and they will mention certain scenarios or possibilities, and then whenever you get closer to the trade deadline, so like around right now, you pick up those talks again and you just start them where you left off. Okay, so we were talking about this guy. Is he still available? What would you want for this guy? You're basically always having these conversations. Then they just pick back up whenever the trade deadline or the draft or one of these really active periods pop up. So these are, this is the culmination of many, many months of work and many months of talks. So that's why sometimes you'll hear, oh, these two teams talked about these players. Sometimes those teams talked about those players months ago, and they haven't had a single conversation recently, and it was just something that leaked out to the media at a much later date, or and the reporter didn't know, or something like that. So there's always talks going on between teams. The agents are constantly trying to figure out what's going to happen with their player, because the last thing they want is for their player to be blindsided. So that was one thing that I found interesting during the article I wrote recently, where basically agents are constantly talking to the teams, but then also constantly calling reporters too, because they know guys like Adrian Wojnarowski and Shams and Chris Haynes and all the national reporters. They have a pretty good idea of what's happening. And right now, everyone's trading intel. You're trading information with the GM or with a reporter. So, an agent may say, hey, I know this team's looking to shop so-and-so. And then the reporters may say, okay, well, I heard this team's actually looking at your guy. There's a lot of trading, a lot of favors happening right now. So I would say that happens. And then with the players, the biggest thing is just the human element, really. They're all focused on basically things they can control, their daily schedule, work, playing well. They're focused on that stuff, because if you're a player and you focus on trade rumors and all the outside noise, you will drive yourself crazy. You really will, because there's so much out there that you could read. You could be searching your name all day long, and you could just go down this rabbit hole, and it's not great for the player to do that. So I know a lot of players around this time of year, they try to tune this stuff out, but it's become really hard in this day and age now, just because social media, and even if they try to block things out, they have friends and family members and reporters that are texting them and asking them questions about it. So it's really hard. But I would just say with the players, the human element is really interesting, because a lot of these guys have a significant other, they're married or they're dating someone, they have kids. There's a lot of people that are involved here, and those people follow along with the rumors as well. So it's just one of those things where there's a lot of sides to this, and right now everyone is kind of working extremely hard and waiting for the deadline. But there's a lot. I think for us, it's fun, it's exciting. You want to look at these rumors, and you want something to happen. For the people involved, like the players or even the agents and the executives, it's a lot more stress and anxiety from their standpoint.
Yeah, what, for us, it's always fun to go, hey, fire up the trade machine and figure out who can go where and come up with all these trades and everything. But you're right, there is a human side to this. As a parent, I think, gosh, if I got traded somewhere else, right? And let's say your kid is in school, right? You get traded somewhere else, then you've got to make the decision. Do you pull your kid out of school in the middle of the year? Right? It's February right now. You're in the middle of the school year. Do you pull your kid out away from all their friends, away from their home and all of that kind of stuff? Or do you go somewhere else and you just go and your kid stays and goes to school, and then you're spending time away from your kid even more than you would normally? That's the kind of thing that's not easy to deal with, and it's something that we often forget in all of this when we're looking at are the Lakers and Pelicans going to work out a trade? Is this going to happen? Is this now? We forget, hey, these guys are stressing, as much as Lakers fans and fans around the NBA right now are kind of stressing out in advance of the Thursday deadline, the players who are seeing their names involved and their families have got to be even more stressed. And there's got to be a definite sigh of relief when the trade deadline passes and maybe they aren't moved, or if they are looking for a trade, if they are moved. I mean, there's this uncertainty can bring that kind of that fear and uneasiness into the lives of these players and their families.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's really interesting because there was the scenario you mentioned. So if you got traded right now, I don't think enough people put themselves in that situation and think about what it would be like. Because I mean, at the end of the day, these guys make a ton of money and they have some of the best, the best career in the world, you could argue. And there are negatives that come with it. So I mean, no one's gonna really feel bad for an NBA player, and I understand that because they're making so much money and living their dream. Mm-hmm. But I would say there's not many jobs out there where I could get a call right now. Imagine if right now Hoopsite could call me and say, hey, I know right now that you're living in Florida and you're doing this for us. We want you to relocate to California. You're going to fly out there tomorrow and then all of a sudden work for a different company. I mean, it's just one of those things where that doesn't happen. So it's hard to put yourself in their shoes and see what they're going through. But it is such a strange dynamic. And then, like you said, if you have kids, it becomes even harder. There was a veteran point guard who got traded from one team on the East Coast he got traded from an East Coast team to a West Coast team, I want to say. But no, he got traded in February. And then whenever you get traded, the team that trades for you can put you in a hotel for 90 days and they can pay for it. So he was staying in his 5-star hotel. I mean, he had a nice hotel and everything. But his daughter was in school, like you mentioned, and he didn't know, should I pull her out? Should mom come with me? Should she stay here with my daughter? And ultimately what he ended up doing was the team he got traded to ended up making an NBA Finals run. So he gets traded in February. He's living in the hotel for 90 days. After 90 days, it was the final year of his deal too. He was on an expiring contract. So he was thinking, okay, I'm not going to get a place and sign a long-term lease. So he ends up just staying in the hotel through June. So he's in a hotel living out of a suitcase from February to June. His daughter ended up staying in school because at that point it's so hard to change schools, and he didn't know where he would be long term anyway or be settled down. So he figured, let's keep her in school there, then we'll figure something out in the off season. So yeah, basically, you have to figure out what you're going to do and come up with a plan. But for this guy, it was staying in a hotel from February through June and then figuring out, okay, in July, maybe that's when we can find a place to settle down. He didn't see his wife. He didn't see his daughter. She would come over weekends sometimes. There would be times where they would, be able to visit and stuff, but it wasn't anything like he was used to. And yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things where it's a hard situation to be in if you're a player. And again, these guys make a ton of money and they have an amazing job. So I know it's hard to feel bad for them, but the situation is pretty crazy. And for any of us, I mean, there's a lot of anxiety that would come with that. I get anxiety when I think, my contract is going to be up in 8 months. What's going to happen? Am I going to have a new job, or whatever? Imagine within a second your city, your lifestyle, your career, everything could just change that quickly. It is crazy to think about. I think that the hardest part too is these players can't trust the executives. Every player wants honesty, they want transparency, but it doesn't happen in the NBA. It really doesn't. And the main reason why it doesn't happen is because if the executive, okay, so let's say if I'm talking about trading my point guard, you don't want the point guard to know every step of the process. And even though you may want to be transparent with him, but then if the trade deadline passes and he's still on your team, you don't want him to be upset that you had all these conversations and almost traded him. It just doesn't. It's not good for the organization if that happens. So what these executives end up doing is saying, "Oh no, don't worry. We're not going to trade you, or we're not having talks." And then these guys get blindsided by moves. So there was one story in particular that I'll tell. I'm sorry I'm rambling here, but
no, Alex, you're fine. These are great stories. Although I will admit, Alex, that now you've got me like racking my brain here trying to figure out who that anonymous point guard is. I'm like, what point guard got traded from what East Coast to West Coast?
I was on
an NBA Finals team.
The way I said it was wrong too. It was actually traded from an East team to another East team. But
okay, so now I got to redo my whole list here.
Sorry about that. I screwed that up. But no, so this is one. So there was a player. This was I don't even know how many years ago it was. Probably 8 or 9 years ago, where he was a starting point guard for a team, and he was popping up in trade rumors. His name was surfacing a little bit, and he was really worried. So he actually went to meet with the GM and talks to the GM, and basically the GM says, no, we're not even having conversations about you. These aren't credible rumors. Don't listen to it. That's not true at all. You're safe. Well, then his brother, and then his wife and his daughter were all very concerned as well. People were actually coming up to his daughter at school and asking her, "Hey, are you moving? Is your dad getting traded?" So she comes to the dad and tells him, "Hey, kids at school are saying this and that." And the dad was, I mean, he hated that for her, and then so he said, "No, I'm gonna find out what's happening. Don't worry." And he tried not to scare his daughter or anything. The next day he goes back and has another conversation with the GM and says, "Look, I really need a solid answer here. I need to know one way or the other because my daughter's asking if we're going to be moving. People are talking to her at school. Like, what's going to happen?" The GM says, "You're fine. You're not moving. Tell your daughter you're safe." So the player literally tells his daughter, "Hey, we're not moving. Everything's fine. We're not getting traded. Daddy's going to be here. Don't worry, blah, blah, blah." Maybe 7, 8 hours later, the guy gets traded. And I remember talking to him right after the trade, and he was so emotional. And I felt so bad for the guy because, I mean, it wasn't even that's just a roller coaster to be on, to where he sat his daughter down and said, "No, we're not going to be moving. You're going to stay in your same school. You can stay with all your friends. Daddy's going to be around." And then gets traded 7 hours later. That's just where these guys, they always have their guard up. And when you look at some of these guys and why they don't trust teams, or why they get, some guys are really passionate when it comes to the whole loyalty thing. Mm-hmm. Because, I mean, if a guy leaves as a free agent, he's the villain, everyone hates him. Well, the players, they've seen the other side of it where they've been screwed over or lied to, and then the team isn't loyal to them. So they're thinking, why should I be loyal to you? So there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that affects players' feelings about organizations and individuals within that organization. And they always have their guard up. They have to. And I think it's one of those things where if you talk to a young player, like the young, naive guys, they're the ones who feel, "Oh, I can never really get traded. Oh, it's going to be fine." I know everyone says that the NBA is a cold-hearted business, but I haven't seen it yet. Well, then everyone eventually has that moment where they realize, wow, this is a really, really crazy business. And this is really, these are decisions that affect so many lives. So, yeah, I mean, I think right now with the Lakers, for example, you look at a lot of these young guys, Brandon Ingram, Kyle Kuzma, Lonzo Ball, they're guys that haven't been traded. They're guys that, up until right now, they are fan favorites, and people, they're probably thinking right now, this is the kind of their introduction to the business side of the NBA. Yeah, they may have seen it secondhand. They've seen it, a teammate get traded, whether it was, Jordan Clarkson, Larry Nance Jr., or they've seen something happen where it was like, wow, that's kind of messed up. But to actually go through it yourself is its own experience. And I think it's really hard for some guys, especially a situation like, the one I mentioned where you're being lied to and, your family is affected. And so, yeah, I mean, there's just a lot out there. This time of the year is very, very stressful for NBA players, as I mentioned. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, I think the best thing you can do if you're an executive is try to be as honest and transparent as possible, because those decisions that you make that are behind closed doors that, affect these guys negatively, or if you screw a guy over or lie to him, players talk, agents talk, everyone hears these things. It's just not great business.
Yeah. And, I mean, people, well, like we saw, right? Anthony Davis's dad came out and was just bashing the Celtics because of how they handled Isaiah Thomas. And yep. his whole situation. These things do matter, and it matters with family members, it matters with agents, it matters with the players themselves. Your reputation matters, and perhaps that's a factor in Anthony Davis not putting the Celtics as one of his preferred teams. We know they've basically put out there that he does not want to go to Boston. But beyond that, yeah, I mean the agents, the general managers, they try to do what they can, but it's a really tough spot to be in all the way around. Like if you're a general manager and you clue a guy in saying, "Hey, we might trade you. This is kind of in the works," and then that player says something, or somehow that word gets out, and the trade leaks before it's done or anything, then it can look really bad on you. There's so many different moving pieces to these trades. So many people who have to sign off on them, from owners to GMs and assistant GMs and all the different people, the analytics people that have to take a look at these deals. It's a wonder, really, that any trades get done at all in the NBA, given everything they have to go through and all the different things that have to be considered. And then you have, the players' families and all of that on top of it. It's just a massive, massive process. And so when we have the trade deadline, you're right. It takes all of these things kind of leading up to this point. It's not just Magic Johnson gets on the phone at 9 a.m. on Thursday and calls up a team and says, "Hey, how about this guy for that guy?" And they just say, "Done deal." Sometimes that kind of stuff can happen, but in general, it takes a lot more than that because of all these different things that go into a trade. It's amazingly complicated to me.
Yeah, and one thing too is you never really know if it's going to be an active trade deadline. Whenever I
Right.
was talking to all these different agents and executives for this article, I was saying, okay, when can you tell that it's going to be very busy? And almost all of them said you really don't know because it could be a year where there's a ton of conversations happening. You have a ton of different guys that are being mentioned, and they seem like serious conversations, but you never really know when those serious conversations will translate into actual moves. So there have been years where there's tons of conversations, and it seems like it's going to be a really active deadline, but then when the actual day gets here, people aren't willing to pull the trigger or something changes and it's a quiet day. There's not a lot of moves. There have also been years where things seem very quiet and then at the last second, a big domino falls. So then every other team starts reacting or doing their own thing. So you really don't know. I would say, most of the people I talked to said you could kind of start telling within 48 hours, 2 to 3 days maybe beforehand, whether things are going to be really busy. But even still, things can change very quickly. That's part of the problem with these kind of deals. I would say a lot of teams right now are waiting for maybe some of these big dominoes to fall. We talked about this before we started recording. The Pelicans, they have other pieces that they want to move. The Lakers, obviously, they've been linked to different shooters like Reggie Bullock. Jabari Parker came up. He's not a shooter, obviously, but they've been linked to different wings, and I'm sure they'd love to do some other moves too. But you almost have to focus on the Anthony Davis situation because that does have such a big impact on everything else. So I mean, right now, again, there's a lot of conversations happening. It's hard to tell what will actually turn into moves. But yeah, I mean, there's so much behind the scenes that it is crazy. And I think one thing too that you mentioned, the whole Anthony Davis situation with his father and the Celtics and all that. I wonder do you think it is just because of the Isaiah Thomas situation? Is that the main reason that they're thinking, I don't want to go to Boston? Is it the Kyrie Irving uncertain future? What do you think it is that makes Davis so hesitant to go to Boston? Because there's other teams out there. I mean, obviously the Isaiah Thomas thing was just the way that was handled was very bad. It was a really bad look just because of how it all went down. But there are other teams that have done very similar things or even worse things. And that doesn't get mentioned. But I'm wondering, if it's a combination of things here for Anthony and his camp.
Guys, we're going to pause for just 1 second to talk a little bit about Mint Mobile. There are a lot of things in life that just aren't right. Carpet and showers, eating dip with your fingers, chunky style milk, paying too much for your phone bill. Now that's really not right. But thanks to Mint Mobile, you don't have to overpay for wireless anymore. They reimagined the wireless shopping experience and made it easy and online only, which means they can pass significant savings directly to you. And for a limited time, they are offering 2 months free when you buy your first month. That's $20 total for 3 months of wireless. That is an amazing savings. Think of everything you can do with all that extra cash. This amazing deal is only here for a limited time. $20 total gets you 3 months of wireless service with 8 gigabytes of 4G LTE data each month, plus unlimited nationwide talk and text. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan. You can keep your own phone number along with all your existing contacts. You don't lose them. Mint Mobile runs on the nation's fastest, most advanced LTE network, and if you're not 100% satisfied, Mint Mobile has you covered with their 7-day money-back guarantee. So take advantage of Mint Mobile's amazing deal before it's gone. Pay just $20 of your first month of wireless and get another 2 months free by going to mintmobile.com/nation. That's mintmobile.com/nation to get 3 months of premium wireless service for just $20. mintmobile.com/nation. Yeah,
I think it has to be.
It's got to be. I think that it's something that they're bringing up because of. I think the Isaiah Thomas thing is a convenient excuse right now. Like, are they upset about it? Does it bother them? Sure, I'm sure they're not pleased with that. But I also think that Anthony Davis would probably like to go play with LeBron James, and if the Celtics are out there as a real option, then and he's saying, hey, I might consider the Celtics, then that gives the Pelicans even more excuse to wait and to wait for the Celtics to come in. But I also think there's something else here, and I think it's very, very simple, and I think Lakers fans would agree with me in this. In that, I think the answer is just Boston sucks.
Yeah, there you go. I like it.
I think that's it. But you know what? As we're talking here, Alex, and we're going through this, I'm seeing I'm refreshing Twitter like crazy because I know that we're recording this podcast, and it's very possible that as soon as we stop, in fact, probably what's going to happen is as soon as we stop, this story is going to change. right?
For
Because
real.
that's what's been going on. And actually, Ramona Shelburne just tweeted something out that I found kind of interesting. She had said before that the Lakers and Pelicans conversations have been one-sided, but she said that New Orleans hasn't made any proposal or counter proposal from what I hear. So again, this lends credit, and again, Ramona's probably coming from the Lakers side of things. That's where she's getting her information. But you could see why the Lakers would be kind of frustrated with this whole thing, and that they feel like they're not even getting a counteroffer to what they're just kind of throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. And it feels like they're trying to kind of get as much as they can out of them.
Yeah, I mean, this whole situation is so weird. I mean, I do think that between now and Thursday, they'll be able to figure something out in terms of not necessarily a deal, but you're gonna have much further along negotiations by Thursday. So I think right now they're probably considering this offer and thinking it over, and probably talking to teams like Boston and saying, hey, what would you be able to do to match this in the offseason? What would you put together? And then they're comparing different things. Usually that's another thing I kind of learned by doing some of these behind the scenes articles. Teams always have multiple deals on the table that they can turn to and do at any time. So, you're having a conversation with, let's say 5 different teams for one player. You have them all on the whiteboard and you're comparing all the different possible moves. You're looking at everything possible. So, it's possible that they're just waiting right now and thinking this offer over. Because again, I mean, what would if you're countering this Lakers offer, what more could you possibly ask for? What would you? I mean, that's my thing.
That's just
More
it.
picks or what?
Yeah, I mean, that's the Lakers could offer up to 4 first-round picks. Josh Hart, Ivica Zubats aren't in the deal. That would be it. That would be basically literally the Lakers putting in everything they possibly can into a deal. As if you got more picks and more players. I guess that could be but at some point the Lakers have got to just say, hey, enough. We can't keep adding to this. It's gonna be interesting. That's for sure. Go ahead.
What's your take on right now? What's the Laker fan feeling about this? Because I mean, I look at this deal and it's so many pieces, and I think one of the big fears is that you get Anthony Davis, and yeah, I mean that's going to obviously help you attract more talent. If you have LeBron James and Anthony Davis, you're in LA on the Lakers, you're going to be super attractive in the future to other players. But that's a ton to give up, and I know in the past there have been fans who were really hesitant to give up anything for a guy that they feel could come in free agency. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, with Anthony Davis, he's under contract next year, so he can't hit free agency until 2020, or I guess the first year that he could really be a free agent would be 2020 after if he opts out of that contract and he's unrestricted. So I mean, because he does have that one more year on his deal next year. So I mean, what are Laker fans feeling though? Because I mean, I look at this offer and it does seem pretty crazy. And I think there has to be some fear too about, hey, we're giving up this core that, obviously it's LeBron James is obviously not young anymore. Anthony Davis is a guy that's had some injuries and has had some injury problems, which is really unfortunate. I mean, is there fear that this could blow up in the Lakers' face if they do make this trade?
100%. Yeah, that's definitely something that we've seen from the Lakers fan base, and I totally get. I have been for the last few weeks, I have been very much on board with, hey, you do whatever it takes. It's Anthony Davis. He's 25 years old. He's a superstar. It's Los Angeles. You get a star in place that you could have for the next, 5 years at least, maybe 10 years, right? If everything goes well. So I've been very much on board with, hey, you go and you do whatever it takes. But even so, when I saw that offer today from Brad Turner putting it out there from the LA Times, I mean, took my breath away a little bit. I went, whoa. That's yeah. You see it in front of you. It's like, wow, that really is a lot. So yeah, there has to be some real concern there, especially when you're giving up these guys. And here's the thing, Alex, you look at guys like Lonzo Ball, Kyle Kuzma, Brandon Ingram. They're polarizing, right? We see it all the time on Twitter. We see some Lakers fans love Kuzma and dislike Ingram, or vice versa. And Lonzo Ball is one of the most polarizing players in the NBA. Some people think he's going to be great. Other people think he can't shoot and he's a bust, right? So the opinions on them kind of vary quite a bit. But still, the bottom line is the Lakers went through all these years of struggle, and as fans, they went through those struggles with them, and they think, gosh, these are the guys we bled for. These are the guys that we suffered through these terrible seasons for. So there's naturally going to be some attachment there. People were upset. I was upset when the Lakers let Julius Randle go, when they let him walk away, saying, hey, he was our 7th overall pick. We went through that horrible season in order to get that pick. Why would you just let him walk away? So there is that attachment too, and maybe that leads to overrating your own assets. I think that could be a little bit of a factor too. But bottom line, yeah, there's a lot of fans that are uneasy with the amount the Lakers will be giving up. But you see that from the other side too, from the Pelicans fans who aren't necessarily thrilled about the return, and maybe that's the mark of a good deal. If you find something that both fan bases hate, that probably means you're pretty close to even value. Yeah,
that's a great point. It's just, I think it's a lot to give up. I really do. I really do feel that way. But that's one of the things when you have, LeBron James that's in your in your organization. We've seen he's always going to push for win now moves, and he's not going to tolerate basically you sitting back and just kind of waiting to get good. In Miami that was the case. He was constantly pushing for moves, and if the organization wouldn't do every single thing in their power to add a free agent, or even if it was the whole Mike Miller situation where they let him go because they wanted to maybe cut some cost and not pay the luxury tax or whatever it was, that whole situation, that was huge to him, and he was very upset about it. So when you have LeBron James, you're going to make win now moves. I think you look at what happened in Cleveland where he joined that team and they were a young group when he got there, and he preached patience and said, look, it's going to take time. He named different young
LeBron
players.
Is not patient.
Yeah, and then even when he says he's going to be patient and it's going to take time, I know this is going to be a long stretch, blah, blah, blah. Immediately we see they trade Andrew Wiggins and others for Kevin Love. And then within a few years, that was one of the oldest rosters in the NBA, to the point that was kind of one of the reasons for him to leave Cleveland toward the end. It was thinking, okay, how can this group improve anymore with the limited flexibility that they have and the fact that all their guys are, either in their prime or past their prime. There really wasn't much left in terms of youth and all that. So that's just kind of, it's not a knock on LeBron. I totally get it. If you're LeBron and you have X number of years left, you're going to want to compete for a championship every single year. It's just one of the, is a side effect of having LeBron on your team that every single young guy could be moved. And there's going to be pressure from LeBron and his camp to make win now moves. So I'm sure, that's another aspect of this too that we didn't talk about. You have stuff that's leaking from a lot of different angles here, from the Lakers side, from the Pelicans side, from Anthony Davis's camp. Yeah, and the fact that Rich Paul is not only Anthony Davis's camp but also LeBron's camp. It's really, really interesting, and I think that's part of this too. And I'm sure right now too, if you're LeBron James, because he and Anthony Davis have the exact same agent, he can have conversations with Anthony Davis and they can talk. Really those tampering rules that the Pelicans were freaking out about and bringing up, it doesn't apply to players. It never has. Players always talk about where they want to play next and team up. So I'm sure
Chandler Parsons basically built a career off of that, off of being able to bring guys in.
Yeah, we know guys recruit each other all the time. Whether it was Draymond recruiting Kevin Durant, right. which is kind of ironic now, but guys are always talking. LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh were talking before the whole Miami thing. There was rumors that dated back to Team USA. Guys are constantly talking. So I'm sure LeBron and AD are talking a lot right now. I'm sure they're talking. This is, I don't know this for a fact. This is speculation. I'm sure they're talking to other star players right now. If they're talking about teaming up and they think this is actually going to happen, I guarantee you there's some star players they're talking to right now, and they could already start that recruiting. The NBA hates it. Rival teams hate it. There's a reason that rival teams don't want to trade with the Lakers. The Spurs, for example, with the whole Kawhi Leonard thing, they did not want to work with the Lakers whatsoever. And now I'm sure Dell Demps and the Pelicans feel the exact same way. There's this belief that the Lakers have everything so easy that they get all these stars because of their market. Everything's handed to them. It doesn't really matter how they run the organization. They're going to be fine because they're such an attractive free agency destination. And then if you're a small market team, you resent that. Now you throw in the fact that they have LeBron and Rich Paul and all this power, and they have even more. They're even more attractive. Teams are going to be very upset about that and hate it. But at the end of the day, there's nothing they can do. These guys are going to talk.
Yeah, you know what? And you're mentioning this as we're talking here. There's more coming up on Twitter now. They're saying that, and I haven't confirmed this because I'm obviously not watching this, but apparently Woj was just on ESPN and mentioned that the Pelicans are asking for 4 first-round picks. They do indeed want that much, but that was one of the things I want to ask you, Alex. There's a sense from Lakers fans that there's an anti-Laker bias, that there's teams who just flat out will not deal with the Lakers, that because the Lakers have won championships in the past, and there's this whole tampering cloud and all that. Even though that I think it's crazy because I mean Giannis flat out told Anthony Davis, come till Milwaukee. LeBron didn't even go that far, and yet LeBron gets all the flack. But is that a real thing? Are there teams out there that seriously will just flat out not trade with the Lakers because they're the Lakers? Even though I mean the Lakers haven't even been in the playoffs in 5 seasons. What is that a real thing that or is this Lakers fans kind of being paranoid and kind of a persecution complex or something like that? What's really going on here?
I think it exists to some extent. I don't think there's teams out there that would turn down an amazing deal just because the Lakers, they're not going to hurt their own franchise in order to spurn the Lakers. They really won't. I don't think so. I think that there is the sense, if all things are equal, we'll take the other offer instead of the Lakers offer. And I mean, you just said, the fact that the Lakers, they haven't even made the playoffs in a few years. There are small market executives that would look at that comment alone and get so angry. Like, Laker fans and the organization, you guys have been very, very spoiled over the years with success, the players that you've attracted, and it does lead to a lot of jealousy and animosity. They look at the fact that the Lakers, not only is it a great market, they get into every single free agency's pitch meeting schedule. Things just seem to come easier to the Lakers. So I understand, it's not fair, but I do think executives look at it and they think, I don't need to help this team. Now, again, I don't think they're going to go out of their way and make a bad trade and, take a C-level offer if the Lakers have an A-level offer on the table. But I do think there's annoyance there. And there's this feeling that, here come the Lakers again. Even when they were struggling, like in recent years, there was this belief among executives that this isn't going to last long. They're going to get some star player, and then another star player is going to come there. It's almost like what we see with the Warriors now, where no team is going to try to help the Warriors. That's where it becomes interesting too, because teams sometimes have to make certain moves to pull off other transactions. So no one right now is trying to help the Warriors if they wanted to free up some cap space to do X, or and the Lakers are the same way. You don't want to help them you're not going to take back a contract to help them make a big move. I think that's kind of more real than, say, teams not picking up the Lakers' calls. There's this, okay, you have enough advantages. We don't need to help you anymore we don't need to help you because you're going to figure it out anyway, and you have things so much easier. So, I mean, I think that definitely exists with some teams. Some teams don't care. Some teams will do that, do the deal and not even care as the Lakers. But I do think that around the NBA there is some sense of, hey, welcome to some struggles. This is actually what it feels like to be a non-Laker team. Deal with it, that kind of thing.
Sure, and that's completely understandable. I mean, you get why there's teams that wouldn't be pleased with the Lakers and all that. And we've talked about this on this show before, that if you look at the Western Conference, and even not just the Western Conference, but mostly the West, and you count the teams that consider the Lakers to be their chief rival, where it's not the other way around, like the Denver Nuggets see the Lakers as their big rival. Yeah, and Lakers fans don't even think about the Denver Nuggets when they think about the big rivals for the Lakers. There are, the Portland Trailblazers are the same way. I was on Portland radio a while back before the Lakers played the Blazers, and they were telling me about how badly the Blazers fans wanted to beat LA and all this, and whether or not Los Angeles fans were fired up about playing the Blazers. And I had to say, well, no, not really. That animosity doesn't exist. So I think sometimes Lakers fans forget that there's a lot of fans around the league that don't want to see the Lakers successful because they were successful for so long. And they were kind of that villain in the league for so many years to so many people. While Lakers fans cheered them on, others saw them as kind of the evil empire. So that's certainly a factor, and I totally understand that. But so what it all boils down to, what you're essentially saying is that for a lot of teams, there's kind of a Lakers tax where the Lakers would have to pay a little bit more than what, say, a random, the Phoenix Suns or whoever would have to pay in the same trade.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, I think it varies from organization to organization, and I'm sure certain executives don't view it that way. But at the end of the day, I do think there are executives out there that feel, you know, if all things are equal, they'll take another offer. But yeah, I mean, if it's, I think it's more just annoyance with the Lakers and how easily things come to them. But yeah, I mean, I do think that exists. I think. I know the fans, they probably have examples of this where they'll point it out, and I'm sure they recognize it because when you're a fan of a team, you're obviously following much closer, and you see all the different rumors and reports of trade talks and things like that. I do think in the past there was a lot of under like Mitch Kupchak, there was a lot of times where the Lakers would overvalue their own pieces. So I do think that existed as well. So that made it even more difficult to make trades because you have an executive that's maybe getting on the phone thinking, oh, it's the Lakers, I don't want to help them. Then on top of it, you have the Lakers overvaluing their assets. That led to a lot of breakdowns and talks, I think. But I do think that, yeah, there is some annoyance and jealousy because the team's been so good. It's the same as, the Yankees in baseball for a long time. And then it's also, when you're an executive, if you've lost a player, a free agent to the Lakers, or you've you tried to get a pitch meeting with a free agent, and you couldn't, but the Lakers, even though they were struggling, got one easily. These things all add up in your head over the years. So I think that's probably part of it too. Sometimes it's more of a personal thing. Maybe there was a specific player that went to the Lakers instead of them, or wouldn't even give them the time of day because they were so interested in going to LA. It's just really it's a perfect storm of things where the Lakers are this historically great franchise. They now have LeBron James, the best player in the NBA. A lot of players happen to be from Los Angeles and love that market. It's a huge market, but it's also, beautiful weather and just everyone wants to live there. And the fact that a lot of players are from there makes it even more difficult because then you're not even competing just with the Lakers, which is already difficult. You're competing with their hometown team, and these guys may have grown up loving the Lakers. So there's a lot there to kind of look over to see why teams get jealous and upset. But I do think it definitely happens though.
Yeah, and that could be playing a role in what's going on here with the Pelicans. Obviously, there's a whole lot more involved, though, that from the tampering claims to everything else that might cause the Pelicans to be upset with the Lakers. Alex, I've kept you for far too long already, but there's one last thing that I want to talk about here, and this was something that really struck me when I was sitting at home and watching the Super Bowl. And my 2.5-year-old daughter were watching the Super Bowl, and she is falling asleep on the couch while the game is on. And I just thought, gosh, that is so representative of kind of the feeling across most of the country right now watching this game, because it has been a not very exciting game. And I tweeted out something about how the NBA trade deadline is way more exciting than the Super Bowl was this year. And you look at what's happened in the news cycle over this last week. You look at how the NBA stories have been kind of at the top of everything, right? I mean, they've been able to capture everyone's attention, even over an actual game being played for a championship in the NFL. Now, I'm sure the Super Bowl did fine ratings-wise and all of that, but in terms of what people are talking about, they've been talking about NBA basketball. So we talked earlier about how this impacts players and how it can be tough on them and general managers and all of those things, but as far as the league goes, and now that we've seen more player movement going on, the NBA itself has to be pretty pleased with the situation they're in right now because of the way that they can draw interest throughout the year with this added player movement that we've seen over the last few seasons, right?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, that Super Bowl was horrible. I guess it was it was the lowest rated in a decade too, so that says something. I
didn't realize the ratings were that low. It makes sense that they were that low because nothing happened, but
it was hard to watch. I think if you're working in the NBA, if you're in the league office, you have to love the attention that you're getting, and the way that the NBA has really. I think it started with big free agency moves. That was kind of the big thing where every July 1st, fans were tuning in. They were trying to see what's going to happen, and you had stars that were willing to change teams, and guys like LeBron James and Kevin Durant, and before that even the guys like Chris Paul and, Dwight Howard, as much as that situation got crazy. You have stars that are willing to change teams, and then that leads to a ton of storylines and a ton of interest. Now, and I think also you see that teams are way more aggressive when it comes to the trade deadline in the NBA as opposed to, say, the NFL, when, the trade deadline is just another day. That's really kind of quiet when the NFL trade deadline comes and goes. I mean, there are some years that there is an exception, but the NBA is by far the most active league, I think, when it comes to trades and free agency moves and just player movement in general. Part of that is also, you have 5 players in the court. So one move can have a huge, a huge impact on your season, good or bad. And one free agency move can lead to, a dynasty. You look at the Kevin Durant to Golden State move. That's one free agent move that has so many, so many ripple effects after that. There's so many implications from that. It's definitely a good place for the NBA to be in. And some people would argue, oh, well, as long as the Warriors are around, it's not good for the NBA just because it's predictable. We know who's going to win. But if you look at the ratings and you look at the interest, even with the Warriors being this dominant team, everyone still cares about trade rumors. When the Kristaps Porzingis trade goes down, people freak out and take to Twitter and react, and everyone cares. When you have Anthony Davis right now in trade rumors, people are going nuts. It's almost to the point now where the trade rumors and free agency rumors are more popular, or at the very least, as popular as big marquee games and NBA final series. And it makes sense. I mean, during the NBA final series, you have 2 fan bases that are, watching around the trade deadline. All 30 fan bases are, actively tuning in and really care and are passionate about what's happening. So, yeah, I mean, Doc Rivers used to always say this. He would say, anytime the NBA is the first story on SportsCenter, we're doing something right. And that was always interesting to me. And he would say it like 10 years ago. And back then, the NFL was always dominating SportsCenter. They were the first story typically, and people cared about football more than anything. Now it's to the point where, in the week leading up to the Super Bowl, we heard way more stuff about the NBA. We were actually talking about that in our Hoops Hype Slack channel. We were saying we had finished watching a game on ESPN, and we still had ESPN on, and we said, oh, they're talking about Anthony Davis. Oh, wow, now they're talking about Kyrie Irving and his future. Now they're talking about this other NBA story. The Super Bowl is tomorrow, and we haven't gotten to a single football topic yet. And it was interesting to us just kind of looking at that. There's definitely a ton of interest in the NBA right now. And when you have interest in those kind of player movement type things or transactions, it leads to interest in the games. You want to see how DeMarcus Cousins looks in his first game with the Warriors. You want to see Anthony Davis make his debut with the Lakers if that happens. It leads to people caring about the games, and then it's a cycle. So I do think the NBA has to love this. And I don't think they planned this. Early on, they were trying to make moves that would stop stars from leaving certain teams. And, they were trying to incentivize guys to stay with their current team. Now with so much, with the marketing being so much around their stars and so many stars changing teams, it's just helped the league even more. It's why the TV deal was so huge when they signed the new TV deal, the rights deal. I mean, it's a good time right now to be not only an NBA owner, but to be an NBA fan, it's exciting too. I mean, it's really interesting all around.
Yeah, and you know what? When you're looking at the way the league has gone, you look at the complaint has been that small market teams or whatever teams have been losing their stars, that those stars are leaving. But at the same time, I think the modern success of the NBA is somewhat thanks to the player movement. So I get the frustration when teams lose their stars, but at the same time, it feels like the league has really benefited from the amount of players that are switching teams and jumping around from one organization to another. We're not in that era anymore where players stay with one team for their entire career. That's becoming a more and more rare thing. And I get the frustration from fans who see a guy walk away, but at the same time, it really does feel like the league has benefited, and the league is in, I mean, this is as strong of a position as the league has ever been in, with a Warriors team that everyone assumes is just going to breeze to an NBA Finals and win yet again. I mean, you've got one dominant team, and yet people still care about this league like crazy because of all the amazing possibilities that are out there. So it just doesn't cease to amaze me what's going on in the NBA right now. And I guess that's a good thing for people like you and I.
Yeah, it is very good. People care. They want to, they're very passionate about it. I also think, we're seeing some of these guys go to small market teams and have success, with their off-court endeavors. Paul George, I know obviously fans were so upset that he didn't go to LA, but you look at, him staying in Oklahoma City on a multi-year deal, guys like Paul George and Russell Westbrook, they have a lot of commercials and endorsements and off-court things. We're seeing guys, can go be in a smaller market and still thrive. When Kevin Durant was in OKC, he had the most endorsement money coming in of any player in the league. So I think it's interesting. Initially, the guys were leaving small markets. It was really hurting these small market teams, and then it was hard to attract anyone else. But now I think because the stars are so popular and the league is getting even bigger and blowing up even more, we're getting to the point now where stars can kind of transcend their market and they can become, they can do everything they want off the court from a small market. And then so now it's kind of come full circle to where, OKC can say, hey, you don't need to go to LA. You can stay here and still have the exact same, not the exact same experience, but you could still have, a lot of off-court projects and endorsements and things like that. Giannis Antetokounmpo has no trouble getting love from everyone around the NBA in Milwaukee. And everyone knows who he is. You're going to see his highlights. You see his games. He had the most second most All-Star votes of anyone. It's just one of those things where I think you're seeing now the small market teams that for a long time were getting screwed over because they couldn't keep their stars. Maybe now we're going to see a point where things turn a little bit and they do have a better job. They do have a better shot at keeping some of these guys because the league just got so big that it's hard to imagine fans not caring just because of a guy's market. I mean, Giannis has so many fans that are outside of Milwaukee now. He's a global superstar. He can be in Milwaukee and still get everything he wants to done. So that's kind of an interesting thing too, I think, with where the league's at now. But like you said, it is great for us. We have a lot of fans that care about the game right now, and they want every single update. You and I, whether it's podcast or writing articles, people are really, really bringing. They're consuming it a ton en masse. So it's definitely working out for us. Hopefully that doesn't change anytime soon.
Yeah, definitely hope that isn't something that's going to change here. Alex, I sat down to record this podcast with you, and I was thinking, hey, we'll probably get in a solid half hour, get into some Anthony Davis stuff, and then we'll get into some of what it's like referencing your article, some of what it's like to be a player behind the scenes, and what goes into trade negotiations and everything. And here we are, we're over an hour now, and I should have known, because whenever you and I start talking basketball, it seems like the time just flies. But I want to thank you for coming on here, because this has been a great conversation. I really, really enjoyed it, man.
Yeah, no, thank you. Sorry I rambled so much. Sorry I made your listeners put up with my my random rambling, but it was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me.
No, I think your random rambling was awesome. I always appreciate all the insight and the stories and the work that you do.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for having me, Ben.
Guys, make sure you go follow Alex on Twitter at AlexKennedyNBA. But let's be real, you're probably already following Alex on Twitter. But if you are not, go follow him at AlexKennedyNBA and make sure you check out his work at Hoops Hype. That's going to wrap things up for now. Fingers crossed. We'll see what happens here before the Thursday trade deadline. Make sure you're checking back with LakersNation.com, also the Lakers Nation YouTube channel. I've been putting out a lot of Lakers Nation news feeds, these quick hitter takes I do on the different stories that have come out on all the trade discussions, so make sure you guys check that out. And, of course, don't forget to head over to the Lakers Nation Facebook page after every Lakers game. Myself and Jas Kang go on there, and we do our full post-game show, and we take your questions and comments, so it is a ton of fun. So come join us. Come check it out, Lakers Nation Facebook page after every single game. That's going to wrap things up for today. Make sure, guys, keep heading over to LakersNation.com for all the latest breaking Lakers news. My name's Trevor Lane. You can follow me on Twitter at Trevor_Lane. Till next time, see ya.